There we go. Erev Tov, good evening. Everyone seems to be muted, so I don't have to remind you to do so, but we'll defer to Lee on whether or not we need to remain muted. I'm Gretchen Marks Brandt on behalf of the Synagogue Council Board of Directors. It's my honor to welcome you to Synagogue Council's workshop, The Purpose, Process, and Importance of Strategic Planning. Synagogue Council strives to provide synagogues with resources they need to do the vital work that they do. Toward that end, we've engaged Lee Rosenfield, a veteran consultant who grew up in Boston's North Shore. A graduate of Hebrew Union College and the University of Southern California, Lee's resume details his significant experience working with both synagogues and Jewish organizations. This evening, Lee will facilitate an interactive strategic planning workshop for us and with us. We invite you to participate through the chat function. And it's now my pleasure to hand the Zoom over to Lee.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Yeah? Okay. So clearly, we're going to see folks joining for the next couple of minutes. That's fine. I'm admitting people. Okay. So it's great to see those of you I see, and for those of you I don't see, I have to see you. Because if I don't see you, then you're not paying attention to me. Unless, of course, you're eating dinner, and then I appreciate that you would put yourself, you wouldn't show yourself. Just give it a second here while a couple of other folks join in. And again, please let me see you. And I'm going to wait until everybody turns on their camera. Still waiting to see Howard and Matthew, Linda, Tara. Look forward to seeing you. Okay.
Howard's traveling. He may not be able to turn it on.
Okay. All right. Okay. So lovely crowd. Nice to see all of you. And as Gretchen said, my name is Lee Rosenfield. I grew up in Salem, Massachusetts. I went to Hillel Academy in what was then Swampscott, and I was a member of Temple Shalom, which is now a merged entity with Temple B'nai Abraham. And I actually just in Beverly, and I just completed actually a wonderful helping them with a major capital campaign. And I've also had the great pleasure of working with Gretchen and her team as the Synagogue Council itself has kind of assessed where it's at and where it's going. And so it's nice to kind of meet all of you. And I may have, in fact, met some of you along the way. So Gretchen, you just did something to the screen where
I spotlighted you.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll let you do that. So tonight is really designed to be engaging with you, although there's a lot of information I'm gonna share with you. And what I want to suggest is that you take in kind of what I present. I know one of the most obvious questions that some of you have already asked when you registered is, well, how much does all of this cost? So just in terms of that question, let me say two things. One is as a courtesy to Gretchen and to Synagogue Council, following this call, I will, if you choose to, happily engage you in a consultation, no charge. Just so to help you kind of take the lessons of today and interpret it for yourselves and for your own community, your own congregation, and try to help you better understand where you're coming from. And then I can help you fashion a concept that would make the most sense. So keep that in mind. And as you develop questions, feel free to put them into the chat box. And Gretchen will help me to manage that. And we'll try to make sure that we capture all of those questions as well. Okay. So here, this kind of first slide is just the pretty first slide, which is required. Let me go back for a minute and okay. So this is the agenda for tonight. I did get an Excel spreadsheet of all of your names and of the congregations that you represent. And while normally I would love to have everybody introduce themselves and say a little bit about their congregation, I know that time tonight is tight, and that could eat up a considerable amount of time. So maybe what you could do is put your names in and the name of your congregation and where you're located in the chat box, just so that I can see that more clearly and others can as well. One of the things that I have learned in the business is that you should all see each other as a resource for one another and leverage each other's knowledge as much as you can, which is really one of the great gifts that Synagogue Council provides to you. So please do that. Okay, so in a nutshell, what is a strategic plan, right? What is strategic planning? It's a big word. In some ways, it's a term that's been around for a long time and maybe even somewhat overused. And I think strategic planning can be different things to different people, but in general, it really is a process, and this is in the slide, in which all of you, as the leaders of your congregations, seek to define the congregation's vision for the future, and in doing so, identify the goals and objectives of the congregation that align to the vision. Okay, so that it's helping you build a roadmap, and not just do things the way things have always been done, right? Which is a lot of organizations do. It's just the way it's always been done. It's what my grandparents did. It's what my parents did, right? And how many of you sit around board meeting tables and you're like, well, that's not what we did. Well, that's lovely, but you're in a very competitive environment. We're in a new world, and you've got to be at the edge, and you need to be innovative. And the only way to do that is to do exactly what each of you are here tonight to think about, which is really take a deep look into the congregation and see where you want to go. So, the question of why now, right? Why do this now? So each of you have your own answer to that, right? And again, if I were really doing this the way I love doing it, I would have each of you go around the room and tell me why you're each doing that now. The question that defines the why now is, what are the circumstances taking place in your particular congregation that are driving your participation in this discussion today? So there are things happening. It could be the ongoing effects of COVID and the pandemic and the fact that, people aren't returning to the congregation the way they did pre-pandemic. People aren't even renewing their membership anymore. All of the familiar issues that we hear about, there could be 100 of them. And, again, I would love to actually hear them. And that's why the way to do that without eating up all the time tonight is to offer each of you an individual conversation with me. And we'll coordinate that through Gretchen. Strategic planning really provides you a sense of direction, and it outlines very particular goals. And it gives you a day-to-day playbook in terms of making decisions, evaluating your progress, and being adaptable and flexible and changing your approaches aligned to your strategy along the way. so that it's not static. So, Yogi Berra once said, without a plan, even the most brilliant business can get lost. You need to have goals, create milestones, and have a strategy in place to set yourself up for success, right? So again, if I were doing this more open, I would ask each of you to raise your hand or to articulate how many of you really have a plan and are following this quote. In my opinion, a satisfied member is the best business strategy of all. And congregations have to remember that every member is a client. Every member has needs and wants and desires, and you've got to approach that as if they are a customer in your store, in your business. And that's a challenge, and it's difficult, especially if you have limited resources, or you perceive yourself to have limited resources, whether those are financial resources or human resources. But again, we know that the best preparation for tomorrow is really doing your very best today. And let's start off on that very positive note, because the fact that you're all here tonight is a demonstration that you're doing your very best today. You're taking this seriously. So kol hakavod, and that's great. Now, in a strategic planning process, you can be very top down and say, it can be like the executive committee or the board more broadly, or the clergy, basically set the tone. They set the agenda, they set the stage. A strategic planning process allows you to engage the broadest constituency in your market. And that constituency consists of your leadership team, your board, your clergy. It also includes your membership. Those are obvious, but it also includes your community, the broader community. It includes funders or donors. It includes the movements that you might belong to, taking into account what's happening at on a national level. It may be taking a hard look at what other faith-based organizations are doing, whether it's in the context of learning and best practice, or you may be a congregation highly committed to interfaith work, and understanding that. And also looking at peer organizations. What are the best practices, best strategies of other organizations in your community or around the country? And so that's why, again, each of you should see each other as a resource for sharing. Now, some of you may live in a market where you feel like you're in a competitive environment with each other, but I would say that if you actually each go through a strategic planning process, you will come out on the side of having great clarity and purpose, and each of you will find that there's room for everybody. So I'll take a quick break. Any comments or questions about that? Is there a stakeholder group that maybe you're thinking of that I didn't even articulate? Anybody want to say anything? You have 60 seconds to do so. And again, I apologize because Gretchen knows this is not my style of very frontal.
I have a question.
Melissa, yes. Where are you from?
Congregation Dorset Tzedek in West Newton. I'm wondering, what about staff? Where does staff fit in?
Great. Absolutely. Good for you. Kol hakavod, right? They're not to be overlooked. They're the people living and breathing. Now, first of all, let's acknowledge that some people on this call may be like, I hate you because you have staff. But for those, because there's different size congregations, right? And everybody has different capacities, and but you should absolutely engage your staff, your teachers, your administrators, absolutely everybody involved. And as it relates to a religious school, you're going to want to, even though many of those families may be members, which comes in the membership, but Not necessarily, and there may be parents or grandparents or other folks who you may want to hear their voice. I think somebody raised their hand. Gretchen, I'm going to let you guide us on this stuff, but I think Ken raised his hand. So Ken, you're from Temple Israel and Sharon, okay?
And also B'nai Tikva and Canton.
Okay.
So another group of stakeholders might be people that have family in a cemetery, if you own a cemetery.
So the congregation has a cemetery, and absolutely. I mean, quite frankly, what I heard in that, although I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you meant it even more broadly than I think of it, is that like my own mother, right? She's at a cemetery, and I of our congregation, and I have great affection. And if the congregation reached out and said to me, we need your support for something, I might consider it, even though I haven't been there for 30 years. So that's a good point, Ken.
Well, I've been executive director at 2 synagogues that own their own cemeteries. And the people that have family at those cemeteries tend to be very vocal and very concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. So by the way, Rabbi Peg and Aaron, that is beyond brilliant what you just said. The maintenance staff know more about what's going on in your congregation probably than everybody, right? I mean, we overlook them and we don't even value them in the way we should. But I have worked with congregations where the membership and the leadership have said, quite frankly, the person who has some of the best relationships with the members are our maintenance team. So that's a really great comment. Is there anybody else? Okay. All right. So if you think of anything else, put it in the chat box. Security, absolutely. Okay. So then let's go back over here. How do I move? Okay. All right. So the next, this is kind of where you start, right? What is what we call your North Star, your North Magen David? And this is really the one metric that best measures the key value proposition of your congregation. Okay. Now you're probably like, what does that even mean? So here you go. So a North Star is a statement, a concept that is forward thinking. It specifies what success looks like for the congregation. It's creative. It's aspirational. It's not what you're doing day to day, right? That's a mission. This is really a vision. And it's clear and easy to communicate, because that's really important, especially when you're out there in the public relations and trying to sell the value of your congregation. Let's admit in. Okay. So if we then go to look at a couple of examples. So Amazon says its North Star is to be the Earth's, talk about like big, to be Earth's most customer-centric company where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online, and endeavors to offer its customers the lowest possible prices. Now, we all know that with all the greatness of companies comes evil. We know that there's good and bad in the world. There are pros and cons. This is just, though, Amazon's, whether you like them or not, which is my point, this is how they see the world. The Alzheimer's Association, just to look at a nonprofit, says theirs is very simple: a world without Alzheimer's disease. I mean, think about that. How easy is that to get, right? There's an organization called Eat, Learn, Play. Eat, Learn, Play Foundation is committed to unlocking the amazing potential of every child by fighting to end childhood hunger, ensuring students have access to quality education, and providing safe places for all children to play and be active. The city of Boston's North Star is to be a growing and vibrant world-class city with a flourishing economy and a pristine environment. And as a child who grew up in the 70s, I think they're actually getting closer to certainly when I was there, where all people are safe, healthy, and have equitable opportunities for success and happiness. And then a North Star from an educational institution is from an organization in El Paso, this independent school district. We will be a premier educational institution, a source of pride and innovation, and the cornerstone of emerging economic activities, producing a 21st century workforce. Okay, so those are some examples from business, nonprofit, government, and education. And now I share with you a congregation's North Star that we just worked with them on. This is a little longer, but you can grasp some of the key points. So this congregation envisions a community that continually fosters and enriches meaningful connection to Judaism through practices and community gatherings while respecting different expressions of Jewish identity. We work to create an environment that engages our members, building on their unique passions, skills, and creativity while developing future leaders to support ongoing spiritual growth and evolution of our congregation. In a nutshell, while supporting each other and deepening our connections with Judaism, we aspire to be stewards of justice in our broader communities.
Lee, one of our participants asked you to clarify the difference between vision statements and mission statements.
So we're going to get to that, right? Mission statement's coming next, so be patient. But this is really, in effect, a vision statement.
Okay.
A North Star is kind of your vision, okay? Any other question? I'm going to get to the mission statement piece, but are there any other questions about this? All right. So mission statement. So a mission statement is what you do, not what you aspire to be, but it's what you do. So the mission statement should define your lines of business, identify your offerings, your programs, and your services, both services with a capital S and a lower s, and specify the market you serve now and you seek to serve in the future. Okay. So here's a few examples of mission statements. So the American Lung Association's mission statement is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. We do this through education, advocacy, and research. That's not aspirational. That's what they do. There's an organization called Give Kids the World Village. This organization, amazing, provides a week-long free vacation to children with critical illnesses and their families. Pretty simple, and that's what they do. TED, you all have all heard of TED Talks? This is brilliant. Their mission statement, spread ideas. 2 words, spread ideas. AARP, I'm officially in it, to enhance quality of life for all as we age. That's their mission. The San Diego Zoo, just there with my kids, to save species around the world. That's what they do. The JDRF, juvenile diabetes, to find a cure for diabetes and its complications through the support of research. So they haven't found a cure, but they're looking to find a cure by providing funding for research. So that's mission. Now here, again, a little long, but this is a congregation in Boston. This is their mission statement. We engage our members in observing Jewish holidays and life cycle events, Jewish education for youth and adults, combating anti-Semitism and injustice, and creating spiritual experiences that meet the diversity of Jewish expression, all in a manner that sustains future generations. That's what they do. We are a community where there are many paths to feeling a deep, comfortable, and profound sense of connection and belonging. We draw from a deep well of wisdom, ethics, and spiritual diversity found in Jewish tradition, faith, and culture to inform, inspire, and interconnect the lives of the members of our community, and to make a positive impact in the world. That's what they do. And we are committed to welcoming people of all ages, ethnic, racial, and cultural backgrounds, sexual orientations, differing abilities, gender identities, or financial status. We fulfill this mission by serving as a house of assembly, Beit Knesset, a house of study, Beit Midrash, and house of prayer, Beit Tefillah. That's what they do.
There's a concern that these are really long and people have heard
Yes.
that it's something easily communicatable, like the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so the shorter the better, but you also want people to, this is not that difficult to read, and people can absorb this, and you want people to see themselves in this, right? So yes, I'm all about brevity, but you also need to articulate what it is you do. If you can do it like the TED and say it in 2 words, spread ideas, go for it. But what we will do, what a strategic planning process will do is it will allow you to engage with all of your stakeholders, hear from them what it is they are looking for, do an audit of all that it is that you're doing, prioritize what you're doing, allocate the resources along those priorities, which means some things may actually have to fall off so that you can do other things better. So this is a process. This congregation, this is where they landed. This is what they felt they do every day and will continue to do. But you're right, Gretchen, it's a bit long. Okay. So we've talked about kind of a vision statement, North Star. We've talked, and again, I realize we're kind of going through this and it's just information right now, but we'll drill down on a one-on-one basis. So we've talked about a vision statement. We've talked about a mission statement. So vision is really aspirational. Mission is what you do. And then values really articulate the following. It defines the heart and soul of the congregation. It's a statement of what you stand for and what everyone can expect. And it's a statement of what's important to the congregation, what it prioritizes, and how it conducts itself. So let's just look at a few examples. So in the business world, the Hilton company, these are their values: hospitality, integrity, leadership, teamwork, ownership, and now, urgency. Lululemon, personal responsibility, entrepreneurship, honesty, courage, connection, fun, inclusion. And these values inform how they train their staff and how they present their products. Nordstrom's, to give customers the most compelling shopping experience possible. That's their value statement. Could say it's a mission statement, right? That's what they do, but this is how they've identified their values. That they want that their values are centered around giving their customers a compelling shopping experience. IKEA, to offer a wide range of well-designed, I don't know about you, but I can never assemble an IKEA thing, even though it's well-designed, but okay. A well-designed, functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. That's their value statement.
So the question is, where in this process does your community's unique value proposition come in?
Right, so.
What makes you different?
Right. So I'm not sure I understand your question. When in the process does.
So the actual question, I'll read it. Also, it seems kind of generic. Is it more important to distinguish what makes our communities different from other communities or list what we do?
No, you really want to differentiate yourself. Absolutely. And this is how these companies feel that they differentiate themselves. So for example, a congregation, this is another congregation I worked with, this is their value statement, right? We are a congregation where all people feel respected, engaged, and valued, and their connection to Judaism is satisfying to them. Our foundation is based on Jewish tradition, respecting all people and valuing inclusivity and diversity through the lens of unity without uniformity. Tikkun olam, through acts of loving kindness and social action. Value youth and adult Jewish education as lifelong learning. Financial means shall not be a barrier to membership and participation in congregational life. So these are the values that guide every decision that is made by the congregational leadership. So when you're in meetings and you're debating difficult topics, you have your values, and you make sure that whatever decisions are made are aligned as closely to these values as possible. Okay.
So is this like a communal covenant or brit?
I'm sorry?
Would this be like a communal covenant or brit?
Yes. I mean, this is a commitment that you're making. This is a statement of how you see of the values of your community, of how you prioritize how you value and respect your congregants, and what they should expect of you, and what new members can expect of you. So it's a covenant. Okay, so you've got this vision of kind of this aspirational goal of who do we want to be and where do we want to be. You have a defined mission. This is what we do. And all of that is aligned against what your values are as a community. And your vision and your mission will not deviate from your values. And if ever they do, you have to address that, or you will find yourself in tension with your values, and your members or in the community will feel tension, and you will not be in sync. And that will create turbulence and conflict. So you're always trying, it's aspirational, you're not going to get it perfect, but you're always trying to aspire to be in line with your values. But an only way to know how to do that is to articulate what those values are. Okay? So again, a value proposition is a promise, a covenant of value to be delivered, communicated, and acknowledged. It is a belief from the customer, the members, about how value will be delivered, experienced, and acquired. And a value proposition, and quite frankly, a mission can apply to the entire congregation or subsets within. So the religious school could have its own set, Now, all of those silos or all of those independent or individual, losing vocabulary here, I'm not sure what word I'm going for, have to be consistent with the broader congregational values, right? That you can't be off doing something completely different than what's aligned, but it can be very specific to the department or the program that you're offering. So this is in other words, this is an exercise that can go beyond just the board, right? The meta level congregation. It can actually be applied on a more micro level by program or department. Okay? So that everybody is working to the same values, and you can hold each other accountable when things go awry. Any other questions around this? So far we've now covered vision, mission, and values. And those are the first three things that you do in a strategic planning process. Because once all of that is defined, you are then able to go through the rest of the plan and develop the rest of the plan. And we're going to talk about that next. But these are the first three things that you need to do. Now, the question that was asked before this Zoom started, when you registered was, can we do this ourselves or do we need an outside consultant? So the reason that you use outside consultants is because they bring objectivity. They don't have a bias. They don't have an agenda. They're there to take an overview and a hard look at the entirety of the congregation and speak truth to power, right? Each of you, if somebody in the congregation is trying to facilitate this, it's a lot harder because they're a member, they're a member of the staff, right? There can be competing interests, and you're kind of a equal among equals. So it's helpful to have an outside facilitator who can help negotiate and navigate the conversation and the difficult decision points that might need to be made. Is there a question in the chat box? Oh, everything is driven by stakeholder input, right? You're not going to just sit in a box in a room by yourself and make up values, right? This is all part of a process of research, and all of those stakeholders that we talked about, first thing, are going to inform the value proposition as well as the mission statement, as well as the vision statement. That's a good question. Okay, so we're going a little bit drilling down, which I'm going to do in subsequent slides. So I'm going to get to your point, Tom. And in terms of a vision, mission, values, I think it's good to do it every 5 years, at least revisit it. Whether or not it's a complete rewrite, probably not, unless something dramatic happens, but it's certainly worthwhile to revisit it. But if you're going to go into a strategic planning process and you don't have this done, you need to, this really is the starting point. Okay, so those are great questions. So here is a link to an article that I would suggest you all kind of, you're going to all get this PowerPoint. Or at least, I don't remember how we said we were going to do this, but Gretchen will get you this link. And this is actually a friend and colleague of mine, Rabbi Arnie Samlin. He's down in Broward County in Florida, Fort Lauderdale area. And he wrote a really interesting article about how to think about your value proposition. So that's just, we're not going to do it now, but you can go check it out. All right, so let me just, I hate when that happens. Gretchen, can you go back for me? Hit back to the last slide.
I can't because I don't have your deck.
Oh, I thought we were, okay, right. All right, bear with me. Yeah, that's what I thought. Bear with me. Okay, so let me just make this now the, hold on. Oh, God. Bear with me. I tend not to be the greatest when it comes to technology. Okay, there we go. Okay, now let's go back to you all and share my screen. All right. So, so this is a little bit of what research looks like. Okay, so going to some of the questions in the chat box, having one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders is a wonderful process. You develop a set of questions based on what information you're trying to obtain. Again, working with a consultant, that's our job, is to help you develop those questions. And you then conduct those interviews, and the consultant can do those interviews. And the value of having the consultant do the interviews is, again, the information is confidential. The individual being interviewed can speak freely. The information then gets transcribed but without attribution, right? So nobody's going to ever know what anybody particularly says. Now, some people say you can tell them anything you want what I say, right? And that's fine, but we're not going to do that, right? That's just not the way the process works. So that's a value of working with a consultant. If you're doing it yourself, people might be very reserved and hesitant to share what they're really thinking. But with a consultant, I guarantee you they will not be. They will happily share. Another way of conducting research is through focus groups, where you bring, natural constituencies or defined constituencies together, 10 people at a time. You do it in person, you do it by Zoom, and you do a focus group. The congregational survey that was asked earlier, this is a great place, and that's definitely part of this. We can conduct a broad survey and collect a lot of really good data. And by the way, none of this is either or. It's all in tandem with each other. You can do a demographic study. Now, a demographic study that's a big undertaking for a congregation unto itself, but a demographic study is oftentimes done by your local federation, CJP. I don't know what the last time they've done a kind of a demographic population study. But if they have done one or they are doing one, you want to read that information. You want to understand that information. And it doesn't have to be just within the Jewish community. If you're in a town, you want to read information about your catchment area so that you understand what that market looks like and how you might define your programs and your service offerings. And then the last piece of research is competitive analysis. What is everybody else doing? Right? That's what you do in business. What are your competitors doing? And competitors could be other congregations. It could be other organizations providing like services to what you're trying to offer or what you do. It could be within any of the, the broad, you can go as broad as you want in terms of the environment that you want to examine.
We have a question. We just did a benchmarking study with URJ. Will we need to do more research?
Well, I would have to look at that study and see what it says, and I'm happy to do that. And then we could assess, and then I'd be in a better position, to help you assess if there's more that you need. I would think, whoever asked that question, you might, having read that, have your own instinct as to whether or not it's sufficient or not. But the best way for me to answer that is to take a look at it and then say, okay, this hit all these areas and you're good, or here's a few other things you might want to do. And then it could be complemented. And so you don't have to rehash everything, but you do a little bit of a deeper dive into some specific target areas you're looking for. Good, great question. Any other questions? No? All right. So in terms of kind of where are we trying to get to, right? So again, you have your vision of what you want ultimately to be. You have a mission. This is what we're doing. And you have your values that guide all of this. And now you're trying to move into well, now what? So what happens from here? So again, this will be adapted to each of you, depending on how you want to construct your own strategic planning process. But a way to think about this simply for a presentation of this kind is to say to yourself, okay, what are our congregation's top 5 priorities? And how do we align these with our resources? Now, some of you may be doing that really well already, but that's a fundamental question that I would ask. What are your top priorities and how are your current resources aligned to support those priorities? Now, that aligns with how are you allocating your time and your energy, your staff time, your board, your leadership, your membership, to realize stated priorities. So the question I would ask each of you is, okay, again, if we were doing this the way I would like to, I'd have you go around the room and say, okay, well, here's one of our goals, our priorities. And here's how we're ensuring that happens. So that's your homework assignment, right? What are your top 5 priorities? And are you aligned? Are your resources, your budget, your staffing resources aligned to support those priorities? And if they are, and those are, and you're sure those should be they may be your current priorities, but again, part of a strategic planning process is, should those still be our priorities? But let's assume for the moment that they are, then you want to make sure that you're properly aligning resource. Any questions on that? And again, I realize that this is at a very meta level, very macro level, and you all are kind of itching there with like, yeah, but I want to talk about me. So we'll talk about you when we start scheduling these additional appointments. Lee, if you switch to okay, yeah. So, slideshow. Let me try to do this from current slide. There you go. Everybody's happier now. Okay. Now, this is so critical, I can't even talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. So this is where, like, we fall down. Like, we all have all this in our heads and we don't tell anybody, or we don't communicate it in a way that people understand it or can digest it. So when we go through a strategic planning process, what we're also doing is not only drilling down, right? Drill, baby, drill, right? We're not only drilling down, but we're also then going to align with the findings with a strategic communications plan so that you roll this out to the congregation and beyond. So what is the messaging you want to communicate? What is the overall plan, timeline for implementation? Because it's all about credibility, right? How many organizations do strategic plans and then it just sits on the shelf, never to be seen from again? Complete waste of time, complete waste of money. Drives everybody insane, me included. I don't want to engage in a strategic planning process with anybody if they're not prepared to then engage in what's called an implementation plan, an implementation process. And this is hard work. This is not easy and it's not going to be quick. It doesn't mean it's going to take years. But what I mean by quick is you're going to have to work to get where you want to go. What this means, what does this mean for the staff, right? In the use of their time, so that the membership understand what the job description and responsibilities are of the clergy, of the staff. What are the program implications? You have to articulate why you're focusing on these core program areas and why you may not be focusing on these. And you have to explain that and not just assume everybody's going to get it or agree with it. So you're going to have to really roll this out and demonstrate the impact this is going to have. Have a convincing and articulated impact statement. This is what we're going for. This is why we're doing this. We can't be all things to all people. We're going to do our best. But if we want to reach our North Star, we've got to focus and prioritize. And then on top of messaging to the, oh, that is so nice. Hi, Mrs. Turkowitz. Not only are you doing this at the meta congregational level, but also at the constituency level. So how you communicate with your religious school parents, your youth group, your younger couples, your senior adult population, your whatever it is, your families may be different, and we will develop with you an aligned strategic communications plan to support each of the constituencies you're trying to talk to, because they're coming to the congregation with very particular needs, and they need to understand how they're going to be impacted by a strategic plan. So again, the implementation plan consists of who, what, when, and how, right? Pretty basic. All right, we're almost at the end here, but part of this strategic planning, there I go again. Part of this strategic planning process, as I said, is aligning your budget, your finances, and aligning those with the priorities that you've articulated. And it's a deep examination into your revenue, your total revenue, and all of your expenses. And it is about financial resource development. So where we also bring exceptional value is helping you expand your own vision of how you can secure resources, financial resources, in potentially non-traditional ways. And I'm not just talking about, the whole raging debate about, the dues model and all of that, but really about a much more expansive view of how you raise money, which, by the way, as Gretchen would tell you, is absolutely of a core competency of my firm, is financial resource development, one of our core competencies. So this financial plan is part of the strategic planning process as well. Okay, so it's all about vision, mission, values, building out the priorities and the program itself, building out a strategic communications message to articulate to the membership and the community what the priorities are, what the impact is, what we're going for, and then making sure you have a proper a financial model that will be in support of all of that. So what does a timeline for all of this look like? So the first thing you would do is you are doing what you're doing. You're on a Zoom with this guy from New Jersey, formerly from Salem, who's telling you that he is a big believer in a strategic planning process, but don't waste your time or money if you really don't believe you have the resources to do it right. But if you believe that you do, or it's so existential at this point that if you don't, you're done, which is sad, but oftentimes what does drive some of this, you would form a leadership team. Who's going to be on the strategic planning committee? And you would then issue an RFP, request for proposal, and engage a consultant if you choose to go the consulting route, which I have tried to articulate why there's value in doing it. You then conduct the strategic planning process, which probably the whole thing could take about 3 months, maybe 4 months. It depends on the size and scope of interviews and surveys and everything that's going to go into this, but you're probably looking at around that kind of a time frame. You're then going to present all of this to all of the stakeholders so that they get it, can ask questions, and can contribute. In fundraising, we always say, if you ask for money, you get advice, and if you ask for advice, you get money. So it's the same idea. If you ask for input and advice, your congregants are going to feel much more engaged than if you just say, here's the plan. And then once you present all of this information, you then go into an implementation mode. Now, typically, a consultant there's a fee for the strategic planning process. And again, it's somewhat arbitrary for me to just be throwing numbers out there at you, but I know you're all like, well, how much is all this going to cost me? It could be as low as $7,500 maybe, depending on, but full throttle strategic plans can be 25,000 or more, and everywhere in between. That is probably the most unsatisfying answer I could possibly give you. It's probably sitting through like Yom Kippur and starving, and you're like, yeah, but it just doesn't give me what I need. But when we have our individual conversations, we can get much more specific about that. And the implementation plan is keeping you honest. It's keeping you on track. So oftentimes what happens is the consultant walks away And then what happens? Things kind of stop unless you really have somebody who's driving it. Now, the good news is an implementation plan, you're not deliberating, the decision making is done. You're now implementing the decisions, but you need someone who's going to drive that process, who has authority. And oftentimes you're never a prophet in your own house. So a consultant can help you play that game. So this is my contact information. And that's it. That's kind of the presentation. So now the floor is all yours. And did I stop screen sharing? Yeah.
Yes, you did.
All right, so go nuts, guys. What questions do you have? Does this make sense? Do you feel like, who is this guy? None of this makes sense. What are some of your thoughts? Don't be shy.
What if the financial circumstances of a congregation are one of the major drivers in developing a strategic plan?
Is that saying we don't have, like, the strategic plan is designed to help us raise more money?
No, it wasn't necessarily to fundraising. It's to bring in the biggest revenue production, which is new members, and aligning expenses with income.
Well, that's exactly what this process is designed to do.
Well, the timeline you showed, or the discussion, was the financial was sort of at the end, not necessarily as part of the beginning.
Well, that's okay, Howard. That's a great point. Thank you. So yeah, so it doesn't mean that it's at the end. It's just it's part of the process, right? And so as we go through the process, things will continue to get more and more clearer, and we will then be able to be zeroing in or narrowing in on, and people will start to get a sense of where allocation of financial resources should go to support the strategic plan. If I understood you, it's not at the end, but it is informed by a lot of the research and information gathering that takes place early on, and then as decision points are made, that has to be aligned against how you're going to start allocating your resources.
I guess what I'm getting at, probably most people on this call are dealing with membership, and the maybe the lack of membership, because I think a lot of congregations are facing that today. And so it's not only, basically it's attracting and retaining memberships, to me, is the headline, and under it, everything else falls.
Well, that's why this whole process starts with vision. But if you can't even articulate a vision, people won't become members. If they don't see themselves part of the vision of the community, if they don't understand what you do or how it's of value to them, they're not going to join, right? So vision, mission, and values, and they need to feel aligned with your values. So I'll just be very personal, and I'll give you a good example. So I'm an openly gay man, right? I'm married. Gretchen knows that actually happened yesterday, and I don't want to talk about it now, but because it's not about me, but it's a long story, and ask Gretchen. She has my permission to share. But thank you, Gabriella. But as a gay man, if I don't feel that the congregation is a welcoming and inclusive community to me and my family, I'm not even going to look at you, right? And part of that is from what you tell me, but a lot of it is going to be from what I experience when I actually go. And that takes training and resources and in wisdom. It's just, just one of a gazillion interfaith families. You could name any number of issues. This is where your vision, mission, values are essential and guide everything else that follows. All right, Kim, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I have two follow-up questions. One was related to the timeline. So you mentioned that the interview, the data gathering is usually around 3 to 4 months. From
The whole process.
the whole process is just 3 to 4 months.
It can be. It doesn't. I'm not a big proponent of it going forever and a day. I think, the interviews and the focus groups, you want it. I try to get that done within about a 30-day, 45-day window. Believe it or
Wow.
not, it's aggressive, but I really try to get that information, because once you're doing it, you want to get it done, and then from there you do the rest of the process. So I would say a typical process, Kim, would be 3 to 4 months, and don't hold me to it, but well, you can hold me to it, pretty much within that time frame.
And just, I have another question, but just as a follow-up to that, so what the data and the plan and the presentation is in that 3 to 4 months, and then is it the case that there are like short-term pieces that are going to be put in place in the longer term? So really, if you think about, depends on how you think about the process, as
Absolutely.
opposed to the, that part. Okay.
That's right. You're almost putting together a business plan as
Yeah.
an outgrowth of the strategic plan. I mean, that's beautifully said. And right, it doesn't mean everything's going to happen on day one, right? There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces. We're going to prioritize that. So
Right. And so my other question is, the ideal size and makeup of your leadership team. Is there best practice around the number of people who should be on there, and who are the stakeholders within that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm not a big fan of just an arbitrary number. What I'm more of a fan of is really a qualitative issue. So meaning you want to have broad constituent representation, right? You want to make sure that all voices are heard and perspectives are heard as you can even construct the process, right? Because you could overlook an entire constituency if they're not at the table. So that said, I would try to keep it somewhere in the 8-person range ish, or up to maybe a million, but no more, because beyond that, now you're just like, you're going to drive yourselves insane.
Okay.
You're going to drive yourselves insane anyway, by the way. But it's better to drive yourself insane and come out of it with a plan than to just keep doing the same old thing. And, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
And is that 8 number including staff, or the staff is sort of
Staff
ex officio
tends
members?
to be tangential, because this is really about lay leadership. Because staff, look, clergy weigh heavily in decisions, and obviously, and so does other members of the staff. But decisions and leadership that's all the board.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I think the hands go up based on who's first. So I think, if I apologize, Judy, if I'm wrong, but I think I see Tara first, and then Judy, you would be second. All right, so Tara, where are you from and what's up?
Yep. So I'm from Andover, Temple Emmanuel of Andover.
Oh, my cousins belong there.
Oh, who are your cousins?
It's Margie and Eddie Gardner, and I think I know the rabbi. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we have a wonderful new rabbi.
Yeah.
We did a whole mission, visions, values exercise a couple years ago as we were preparing for our rabbi search. And so what we're really interested in is the strategic planning part, to really have a tangible plan that we can then work.
That will save you money, right? So don't mean to interrupt you, but before I forget,
that's my question. You're actually about to answer it. Yeah.
I would say that a vision, mission, values exercise unto itself could cost upwards of, again, depends on size and scope of the project, but it could be around $15,000. If you shave that off because you did it 2 years ago, then all we do is we take a look at it, make sure everybody's still comfortable and this is all aligned, and then we just move forward from there.
Perfect. Then I'm going to be following up with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Judy Levin Char. Okay, Judy.
Yes, hi, Lee. Thank you for this. This has been very helpful. I'm going to give a shout out to Temple Shalom of Newton. That's where I'm from, and there were 5 of us here from Temple Shalom because we are about to embark on strategic planning. And so we all were very anxious to listen to what you had to say. I was the one who wrote about, we already have a mission, vision, and values statement, although it's probably longer than 5 years, but less than 10. So your point about reviewing makes good sense, and I think we will do that. We've also formed our committee already, and actually are having our first meeting on Thursday. So this was, really very timely for us. So, but one of my takeaways is that maybe we need to step back and look at who's on the committee and make sure that we are, you said, make sure that you have, broad representation. So I think we should definitely be doing that. And I'm thinking that we're also going to be maybe looking at the statements that we've already made. And Carol Berlin, we're co-presidents, and she mentioned that we just completed the benchmarking survey. So we have little bits and pieces.
No, that's great.
Of
And all of that will inform the plan.
I hope. And so the other question is how, in terms of your contact and whatever, how does that work? If we wanted to chat with you a little bit, how do we do that?
Well, in the Gretchen will share with you, which she's already done, but she'll
She
do
did,
it.
yeah.
My email and my cell phone. And you can go to my website, which is rosenfieldconsulting.com. Very simple. And just reach out to me and we'll talk.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And somebody did ask, yeah, we're going on a little bit of a honeymoon, even in these crazy times for a few days, but that never stops me. Maybe a problem for other people in my family, but it doesn't stop me. All right, so I'm seeing Tara, and then it looks like Rabbi Peg. Tara, you're up.
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So then
Yep.
Rabbi Peg, is it Rabbi Peg? You're on mute.
I'm wondering what it is that the committee would be doing. And if the committee itself were to be conducting the one-on-ones, then isn't that sort of like 8-on-1? Or do you break them
No,
up?
well, no, I mean, well, again, I'm not a big fan of that because people are not going to be as open necessarily as they might be with somebody who's an outsider, objective. But if you do go down that path, no, it's the rule of thumb is okay. So interviews of this kind are typically the interviewer, the person interviewing, asking the questions, and then the participants, the couple or the family. Now, yeah, and it's really as simple as that. So you would pick of your committee of 8. You would if you go that route, you would divide up the people you're interviewing, and each of you would take your share, and you would do them one-on-one.
So if I were to sort of instigate this, because this is still a very small synagogue and rabbis get to do a whole bunch of stuff then, would I have my committee draw up questions and then sort of suggest to them that they do a lot more listening than saying, yeah, but when they are interviewed?
Well, that's exactly the point. If you're like doing, yeah, but you're not listening. You have you're inserting your own agenda. So you might as well wrap it now and don't even do it. Because not only is it ineffective, it's actually offensive to the person being interviewed, because you're basically like, what are you wasting my time for? You're more, it sounds more of a sales pitch. That said, this is all about critical listening. Now, if you go the route of using your lay leadership, I'm happy to help you form your questions. You have to all be operating from the same place, right? You can't. You have to be asking the same questions, so developing the questions and then training people how to actually ask them, transcribe the information, And I can do that. And if that's all you need, then that's just an hourly engagement. And it's not very, that's what it is. And again, we'll work on that through Gretchen. And again, because of my relationship with her and her outstanding leadership and the organization as a whole, we'll do it at a discounted price point, of course. That sounds like a sales pitch, which it is, by the way, but it is also true. All right, who's next?
There was a question earlier, Lee, about SWOT analysis.
Oh yeah.
Is that split thing?
I love SWOTs, right? I mean, they're fabulous. So what is a SWOT analysis? For those of you, I mean, most of you might know, but SWOT is basically strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses tend to be are internal, and opportunities and threats are external, meaning what are the strengths of your congregation and what are the weaknesses? And that's an internal examination. We're good at this, we're not good at that. Opportunities and threats look at the external environment outside of the congregation and say, where are opportunities for growth, for new members? What are threats? What are the threats to our congregation? The Jews are leaving town. They're moving across town. That's a threat. Now, but the goal in all of this is how do you then turn weakness into strength and threat into opportunity? So a SWOT analysis is a fundamental part of this process. I probably should have actually spelled it out more clearly, but yes, thank you to whoever asked that absolutely brilliant question. We definitely do a SWOT analysis. Now, Rabbi Peg, are you still hand up or no? You're good. Okay, who's next? I want to hear from some of you I haven't heard from.
It's a lot to digest.
It's a lot to digest. It's also important to model. I did a lot of talking tonight. A good consultant does a lot of listening. So tonight, the intention was to push information at you, to get you at least thinking. But if you engage, you're going to see a whole different side of a lot of questions and asking and probing, all with the design of getting you to the right place. And that's how this process will work. And if you're in my shoes, again, interviewing, conducting this, you have to be prepared to suspend your own judgments and really be present and listen to what people have to say and try not to have your own filter on that. Because the minute you do that, you lose that objectivity. And unfortunately, it really diminishes the process and the outcomes. So,
well, why don't I formally close the program? And then if there's a few people who want to stay on with questions, we could keep the Zoom open for another 5 minutes or so.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
And then if you want to schedule a meeting with me, why don't you reach out to Gretchen and let her know, and she can kind of help coordinate all of this. Just initially, once we get past that, you'll just deal directly with me.
Great, thank you. Lee, I am so very grateful to you for your friendship and for this incredibly informative presentation. Thank you all for joining us this evening. If you wish to review the material presented, the workshop video will be available, God willing, tomorrow, the Synagogue Council website, which is www.synagogecouncil.org. In addition, this week and next, the Synagogue Council is offering a variety of Zoom-based events. Please note that our program, originally scheduled for tomorrow night, featuring professional engineer Kurt Friedman about energy conservation and cost reductions, has been postponed because he's ill. On Thursday at noon, Rabbi Ron Fish of the ADL will provide updates for congregations from the ADL. Next week, we're partnering with the Jewish Grandparents Network to host the third in our series of workshops about attracting and engaging millennials. There are also two opportunities. to take
Gretchen, while I know you're reading, can I just interject really quickly right there?
Yeah, of course.
So the Jewish Grandparents Network is one of my clients, and it is a nascent and relatively new organization dedicated to really engaging the intergenerational family in Jewish communal life, because we tend not to do that well. So you can visit their website, and if you are interested in that, you can reach out to me directly as well.
There's
Great
outstanding
organization.
resources on their website. I highly recommend it. They also did a study of thousands of Jewish grandparents and learned so much about them as providers for their children and grandchildren and relationships and so forth. Anyway, that study is on the website as well. So I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow, and I'll include that website in the follow-up email. Okay, the last program I want to encourage you to participate in is next week. We're giving you 2 opportunities to take a guided tour of culture with a K, KOLTURE. It's a digital platform, an expertly curated collection of arts, resources, and supporting materials. And registration for all these events, once again, is available on our website, www.synagogecouncil.org. We wish you good health and look forward to seeing you soon. Laila Tov. But once again, if you have a question, please stay on for a moment.